Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. No deputies for Trinidad and Tobago's Commissioner of Police in sight. This story takes the lead in our 1019th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Friday, 1st January 2021. Details when we return on this spanking New Year's Day. Welcome back. The Police Service Commission in Trinidad and Tobago has not followed through on its promise to have the recommendation for Deputy Commissioners of Police ready by the end of December 2020. TV6's Nisha John Mohammed has more in this report.
There will be no new appointments of permanent Deputy Commissioners of Police until 2021. In August, the Police Service Commission indicated that the firm hired to oversee the recruitment process would have made recommendations for the post by December this year. Following this, a merit list would have been prepared and sent to President Paula May Weeks. With the end of the year just 2 days away, TV6 News was reliably informed that the Commission would not meet the December deadline, as additional time is needed to complete the exercise. When contacted today, Communications Specialist at the Police Service Commission, Rayanne Harper Walters, would only say that the process is ongoing. The permanent appointments for Deputy Commissioners of Police became an issue earlier this year when recommendations were made that former Acting Commissioner of Police Erwin Hackshaw be suspended. An express investigation revealed Mr. Hackshaw received just under $2 million for private work done while he was on vacation. Due to a lack of permanent DCPs, the Commissioner made the argument then that it was near impossible to put together a tribunal to look into the allegations. According to the TTPS regulations, the officers sitting on the tribunal had to be at a rank higher than Mr. Hackshaw. The only person at that time was Commissioner Griffith. He said it would be unfair for him to be judge, jury, and executioner in this matter. As such, talks began with the PSC to have the vacancies filled. A newspaper report has suggested that the head of the Special Operations Response Team, Sergeant Mark Hernandez, and the head of the TTPS legal team, Christian Chandler, are being considered for the post of DCP. When contacted, Commissioner Griffith declined to comment on the matter. Nisha John Mohammed, TV6 News.
Meanwhile, National Security Minister Stuart Young says the border closure exemption system is designed to be as fair as possible. He also says there is no discrimination as the government tries to repatriate nationals safely, as the government is facing about the recent return of the daughter of the Prime Minister and the son of the Attorney General from abroad. Minister Young wants to assure the public no favors are being granted as many nationals abroad are waiting on their turn to return home. Jewel Brown of TV6 News reports.
Used to face criticisms from some nationals abroad and those politically opposed to it as the government continues to face criticisms from some nationals abroad and those politically opposed to it over its border closure policy. National Security Minister Stuart Young says border closure remains a pillar of the COVID-19 management at this time and has proved effective in protecting the population in Trinidad and Tobago. Minister Young is the cabinet member who has the responsibility to grant or deny border closure exemption requests. On Tuesday, Minister Young said the National Security Ministry has worked closely throughout with the Ministry of Health to ensure that the government maximized the number of repatriations, always considering the state of the parallel healthcare system and being mindful of not overwhelming same. In her Christmas message, opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar said there are Trinidad and Tobago citizens who have been unable to return home due to the closure of the borders and the stringent policies for repatriation of the nation's citizens put in place by the government. Minister Young said he has been sued as the Minister of National Security on numerous occasions, but that to date the courts have upheld the system and the policies of repatriation. He said the system is designed to be as fair as possible and there is no discrimination as the government tries to repatriate nationals safely. In the past 2 weeks, the government has had to defend its border closure exemption policy in the court of public opinion in light of criticisms as one of the daughters of Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, who had been in New York before TNT's borders were closed on March 22nd, returned home last week. Dr. Rowley dismissed any speculation that his daughter got to the head of the line.
No, it wasn't the head of the line. It was the end of the iguana tail. She came home on the last flight that could have brought her home in time for Christmas. No favors, didn't jump any queue.
Minister Young said the Prime Minister did not discuss the matter with him.
His daughter put in an application like everyone else on the 4th of November. 11, yes, correct, some time ago, and was in the queue like everyone else.
Criticisms have surfaced over the return of one of the sons of Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi, who reportedly was recently in Ireland. The AG reportedly said no favors were granted for his son. Minister Young said that as at July 29th, there were 5,539 applications made to enter Trinidad and Tobago, and that as at December 23rd, 9,557 exemptions were granted. He said this shows that the vast majority of people who were genuinely stuck outside as at March 22nd were granted exemptions to return. Minister Young said in his statement that every Caribbean Airlines flight leaving over the past few months to Miami, New York, Barbados and Canada has nationals on it, and many of these persons then apply to return. He also said there are students who left in August and September to go back to schools abroad and then applied to return home for Christmas or wanted to return due to a change in their schooling circumstances. Several persons continue to complain that they are stranded abroad and want to return home. Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Over in Guyana, on the heels of calls by President Irfan Ali for overseas-based Guyanese to return home and invest in Guyana, one overseas-based businessman is reminded that the investment climate must be conducive, citing transparency and security as two of the major issues hampering investor confidence. HGP's Wendell Badri has the details.
While His Excellency Mohammed Irfan Ali has called on Guyanese in the diaspora to return home and invest in their country, one overseas-based businessman, Rafik Bashk, is calling on the President to ensure that the country's investment climate is conducive, be it small or large-scale investment. The businessman specifically highlighted security and transparency as being at the top of the list to ensuring that the investment climate is conducive.
People are afraid to come because, first of all, in America, you don't know who's a businessman. Someone knows you, but when you reach Guyana, you're like a white sheep among black sheep. Mm-hmm. You understand? Quick time people want to come roll up on you. So these are some of the things that is concerning people here when people speak it. You know, when people think it, a lot of people want to come home. A lot of people want to come and invest.
During his feature address on Sunday at the Guyanese Republic Jubilee Award ceremony and presentation, organized by the Guyana Consulate in Canada, President Irfan Ali called on Guyanese living in Canada to return home and invest in the country, as he signaled his government's commitment to ensuring an enabling environment for economic prosperity. The President is quoted as saying, and I quote, "Many of you call me directly and say, I want to come and do this, but what if? And we acknowledge that there are areas in which we have to improve to make you comfortable in an environment in which you're accustomed to, speed at which you get service, and quality of service. We are not hiding from these things. These are things we have to fix, and we're fixing." End quote. Bashk, who migrated more than 30 years ago, is the legal owner of a 4-acre property, Abak Sierra Johanna, on the east bank of Demerara. And having made the decision to invest in the country of his birth last year, he decided to begin infrastructural works on his land, but was prevented from doing so after he discovered that his property had become overrun by hordes of squatters who refused to move. Bashk's power of attorney, Abdul Azim, who resides in Guyana, reached out to this newscast in October to highlight the issue with the hope of getting some help after several complaints to official bodies fell on deaf ears under both previous and current governments. While Bashk has heaped praises on the current administration for its attempts thus far to remedy the situation, he asserted that a number of persons connected to him in the USA are fearful about returning home to invest, having observed the plight he faces currently. He therefore suggested that the government should use his plight as an example to reassure and boost investors' confidence.
The government should be on the side where, protect the people who's coming there in a way that we can show others that we are here with you. We are here with you. The encourage you to come. Here it is. Here's an example. Make us an example and show others that we are here. That we are here for you.
The businessman further lamented that while he understands with every investment there will be risks, he said he has suffered heavy financial losses as a result of the unfair squatting situation on his property.
Any losses? Tremendous. Tremendous losses.
President Ali, during his address to persons in the diaspora, had also stated, and I quote, "We're in this together. We want you to come. We are awaiting your arrival. We know you're committed. We know you have love for country. Take the bold step." End quote. Wendell Badry, HGP Nightly News.
The Castries East Member of Parliament is calling for more thoughtful public discourse on the scourge and moderation of the rhetoric espoused by public officials. Colby DeVoe of HTS News Force has that story.
Leader of the opposition, Philip J. Pear, has expressed concern about the recent upsurge in violent crime on the island, which has resulted in 8 homicides in just over the span of a week. The startling death toll has taken the overall homicide rate to 55 for 2020, with just 1 day before the end of the year. 2017, with 60 confirmed homicides, remains the deadliest year on record in St. Lucia. The count for 2020 is the second highest tally in the nation's history.
It is very concerning. It's very concerning and not very good news at all. There is nothing to rejoice about. First of all, I would like to express my condolences to the people who lost their lives, the victims who lost their lives. It's tragic to lose your life under these circumstances, even more tragic than normally. Also, for the people who are accused of committing these crimes, I hope that justice is swift and justice be served. It's a very unfortunate circumstance that our history must be broken in that way.
Pierre hinted at the need for elected and public officials to moderate on the tone of the rhetoric, not just on crime, warning of the power of the spoken word on the public psyche.
But it's time for us to reflect on what we say as leaders, on what we say in the pursuit of political office. It is time that we understand that sometimes in the heat, as leaders, we must exercise restraint in what we say, because people are listening to us and our words mean something.
Amid calls for a sound evidence-based public policy approach to crime management, Pierre believes there should be a more thoughtful articulation of thoughts in the push and pull of public discourse.
This is why it's very disconcerting when people at the highest level make statements that seem to create a level of hatred in the country. That seem to create a level of volatile behavior. And this is why I'm very concerned when we make statements that seem to be creating disharmony in the country.
While law enforcement officials report of a dramatic rise in most categories of crime, there has been a notable rise in the number of homicides. A gun attack at Sunbelt, which claimed the life of a 35-year-old laborer, bookended an 8-day period of 8 killings, which included a double homicide at Leslieland. The Christmas holiday period was also overshadowed by 3 murders. Colby DeVoe, HTS News Source.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.